Crews were dispatched immediately, and the father told us that he was in the bathroom with his two children. There was smoke in the building, and he was obviously in fear of his life.
As firefighters arrived, they spotted the 999 caller was now out on the roof at the back of the home.
Sitting on a flat roof, potentially with a fire underneath you, is extremely dangerous.
They don't get more serious than that. There's a family in danger, in a fire, and they have to give 110% to save that family.
The man and his children were brought down to safety, but the children's mother was still believed to be inside.
We're aware there's still somebody to rescue, so the urgency is high. The firefighting crew entered the area and identified a body that had been burnt. There was clear evidence, due to the amount of burning, that she was a fatality.
The body was identified as 34-year-old mother of two, Kirsty Wilson.
The intensity of burning was quite localised, leaving the rest of the property relatively unscathed, apart from some smoke damage. And that is unusual.
Was this a tragic accident? Was it something more sinister?
Kirsty Wilson was a vibrant, outgoing, vivacious, sociable woman with a great sense of humour who was exceptionally good at her job. Her mother described her as a woman who turned heads, and anybody who met her loved her as a person as well as a great friend and colleague.
Talking to people that knew Kirsty, she was vibrant, she was energetic, she was colourful, she was passionate, had everything to live for.
In 1999, Kirsty met 31-year-old Alan Jermy.
Kirsty and Alan both worked in the motor vehicle industry. Kirsty worked for Mercedes, Alan worked for Volkswagen. Alan was quiet, he was introvert, he was intense, very private individual, very different to Kirsty.
Despite their differences in personality, the pair hit it off. They moved in together and welcomed two children.
6 or 7 years into their relationship, they seemed to be an ideal couple. A lovely house in a very smart part of Surrey, and two kids, and two very good jobs. But there was a clear difference between their lifestyles and between their own personalities. He was a black belt in martial arts. He spent almost all his time, certainly all his spare time, keeping fit, doing practices, and just working out constantly, which his family played no part in.
After 8 years together, Alan and Kirsty began to drift apart.
In the spring of 2007, Kirsty begins to develop feelings for her boss at work.
She had known him since she joined the company as a graduate trainee, and little by little he seemed to be getting closer to her, and she seemed to be getting closer to him.
Unbeknownst to Alan Jermy, the pair began a relationship.
Kirsty and her boss spend an increasing amount of time together, and they're really forming quite a deep relationship.
Here was a man she could admire and she could love.
But not long into the couple's affair, their secret relationship was nearly exposed.
Jeremy discovered a text that the boss had sent to Kirsty privately, saying, "I wish I was with you now," and his suspicions immediately came to life. Kirsty's explanation of it, this was nothing more than some mild flirting.
Despite his suspicions, Jeremy accepted her explanation. Kirsty and her boss's relationship continued to develop.
They were very excited about the future. They were very much in love with each other, and they had everything to look forward to. Kirsty had obviously kept that quiet for some time.
Kirsty's boss was married at that time, but he increasingly decided that his life surely lay with Kirsty, and so he took steps himself to end his relationship with his wife, so that he would be available, hopefully in his eyes, to take up with a new life with Kirsty. Kirsty had to take steps along similar lines.
Kirsty decides to break the news to Alan that she wants a separation, but she doesn't tell him the exact circumstances about why.
She was somewhat concerned about how Alan would accept the news that she wanted to enter into a relationship with her boss, and so she broke it to him in stages.
Although there was no history of violence in the relationship, Kirsty had warned her boss about what Alan Jermy might be capable of.
She knew that he was a martial arts black belt, and she knew that if he lost his temper, then he could seriously hurt her if he wanted to. Alan Jermy and Kirsty were living together in the same house, but they were living separate lives.
After Kirsty confronts Alan about the separation, she wants to sleep in separate rooms, but Alan insists that they have to stay in the same room so as not to confuse the children. I think that this is Alan trying to remain in control of a situation that he feels increasingly out of control over.
He changed into the model partner. He was basically spending a lot more time at home. He was doing a lot more around the house. He was cooking. He was hoping that he could win her back and win her affections back and change her mind.
By the time she's approached Alan about ending the relationship, she's already fallen for someone else, and it's now just that Alan is catching up.
Despite Alan's best efforts, Kirsty made it clear the relationship was over.
Kirsty and Alan continue living together and co-parenting their children, and over these months it seems that Alan's coming to terms with the end of this relationship, and they're both looking to move on.
Alan Jermy wrote a letter to Kirsty almost to confess that he had been the cause of the failure of their relationship.
The letter was basically thanking her for the good times they'd spent together, for the happy times they'd had, but appreciating that she needed to move on.
He claimed that he was now over everything and was looking for a new relationship with other people himself.
Alan said that he had joined Match.com. He also changed his Facebook profile, so he was now a single person. He was saying to everybody that he accepted the breakup. He appreciated that they'd grown apart, that they were going to be adult about it, and that basically he would move on with his life.
In August 2008, the couple agreed to put their house up for sale.
They'd had the house decorated in preparation to do that, and for all intents and purposes, they were going their separate ways, and as we understood it, fairly amicably.
However much Alan Jermy wanted to give the outward impression that he was acting as a grown-up and accepting the inevitable and reacting in the right way, there was still part of him who still thought he could win Kirsty back. So the first moves to sell the house by putting it on the market must have led to a seminal moment in Alan Jermy's brain. At this moment, the reality he'd been trying to put off was now the truth.
Kirsty broke the news to Jermy that she was seeing another man.
Kirsty had made it clear that she was going to be in a relationship with her boss. She had also told Alan that there was a party coming up that she and her boss were going to attend, that they were going to be together at the party, and that they were going to spend the night together after the party.
Whilst he's appearing to be supportive and accepting of the separation, this has got to be quite overwhelming for Alan.
She was about to leave him for a new life with her boss. This must have come as a hammer blow to Alan Jermy's hopes and dreams. Before the house was due to go on the market, suddenly fire breaks out in the house.
Fire rescue? Hello, I've got smoke in my house. I've got 2 young children in the house. Are you able to get everybody out of the property? I'm upstairs. The fire was downstairs. I'm not sure this room. Yeah. Come in, sweetie. Okay.
Are you all going into the bathroom?
Yeah. Right, shut.
You shut the door. Okay. Have you got a towel or something in there?
Yeah.
Can you soak it? Under the door.
Yeah, any water, sweetheart? Any water? Good girl.
Is that the bottom of the door you've blocked up there? Yeah, that'll just prevent any going through the door.
The only thing is, I don't know where my father is.
Right. Do you think she's in the house?
Yeah, I went to bed early.
The information we receive is that persons reported fire. They don't get much more serious than that. The urgency to get there is at utmost, but they're also aware that they will be risking their lives and seconds count. It's all about speed, it's all about urgency. urgency. It's all about saving life. A search quicker.
When firefighters entered the living room, they discovered Kirsty's body.
The smoke was clearing at this stage, and it became evident to the crew that the extent of damage and burns to the casualty was quite severe, and that the chances of the casualty being alive were very remote. I think firefighters in particular always go through a little bit of soul searching, thinking, could we have saved that person? But I think in this particular case, that was tempered by the fact that Kirsty was clearly dead before we arrived. There was significant burning to the face, upper torso, and there was limited fire damage in and around the body, which indicated that the fire was localised on Kirsty as opposed to Kirsty becoming a victim of fire spread.
When paramedics arrived, Kirsty Wilson was pronounced dead at the scene.
Whenever someone dies in a fire, police are always called. It's our job working with the fire service to investigate how the fire started, but more importantly, how someone came to die, to understand whether that was a tragic accident or something more.
Jeremy and his 2 children were taken to hospital as a precaution.
I recall that a lot of the people that were first at the scene made a comment that ultimately Alan was very calm, very relaxed at the scene, and the ambulance crew made remarks that Alan mentioned nothing about Kirsty on the way to the hospital.
This is unusual as someone who's just gone through a traumatic loss of an ex-partner and the mother of your children. However, it's not enough to immediately, on its own, cross red flags when everyone responds to trauma in very different ways.
At Jeremy's home, police and fire personnel inspected the scene.
There were some things that were very concerning very quickly.
On our arrival, there was some smoke in the road, but it wasn't billowing out of the building. It was more like a thick, moderate fog than a billowing, dense black fire that the crews were prepared for.
The fire was very localised to the lounge. Certainly no evidence of a lot of smoke damage in the property, so that clearly didn't add up.
One firefighter memorably described it as nothing worse than a smoke-filled barroom in a pub during the days when you were allowed to smoke indoors.
With the fire under control, police and firefighters looked for a possible cause.
In looking into a fire, there now becomes the possibility of a criminal process, and therefore the police lead on that.
It's our job to work with the fire service in particular to investigate that fire, find out how it started, and find out ultimately how Kirsty's come to die.
There was clearly a slight smell of accelerant or some kind of fuel-based smell. There was no evidence of smoking material near Kirsty. We would look at potential electrical causes. There was no electrical causes near Kirsty. Therefore, we now can only look at Kirsty. There was limited fire damage in and around her body. There was limited damage on carpets and furniture, but her body was quite seriously burnt, and that is unusual. To me, it looked like it was a deliberate fire.
And the positioning of Kirsty's body raised further questions.
It looks like she's been specifically positioned to look as though she's fallen asleep whilst watching TV, with a pillow under her head.
Now, if she was overcome with fumes and was trying to fight for her life, surely she would have been on her hands and knees trying to escape. This seemed a very strange, almost posed posture for a woman in a smoke-filled room.
With the physical evidence pointing to foul play, paramedics at the scene also had some concerns.
I vividly remember at least one of them saying that from their experience, they believed Kirsty may have been dead longer than the timeline in terms of the 999 call would suggest. So at this point, I believe Kirsty's been killed, and this is a murder investigation.
4 hours after calling 999, Alan Jeremy was taken into custody and questioned about Kirsty's death.
We've only got a certain amount of time with Alan in custody, so it's important that we get as much information from him as possible. At this point, we've still got an open mind. It's really important to say that at the end of the day, we're trying to prove or disprove whether Alan has been involved.
Jeremy put forward his version of what happened the night that Kirsty died.
According to Alan, he gives his daughters dinner. They all watch Disney Channel for a little while before he takes the girls to bed.
Alan Jeremy went out at about 8:30 or thereabouts to fill up his car with petrol and to draw out some money from the cash machine. He'd then gone back home and basically sat with Kirsty.
He then went to bed, leaving Kirsty downstairs watching Big Brother.
And that was the last time that he'd seen her.
Alan Jeremy told the police that as far as he was concerned, an intruder must have broken into the house, murdered Kirsty, and set fire to the house.
He was adamant that he hadn't been responsible for the death of his mother.
We are looking and have an open mind to looking at other lines of inquiry. I can't preclude that someone else is either responsible or has worked with Alan in killing Kirsty. I'm looking for any evidence that someone else had done this.
At Alan Jeremy's home, detectives looked for any evidence to support Alan's theory that someone else may have been responsible for Kirsty's death.
We've only got so much time with Alan in custody, and we might only have his house for a finite amount of time. And we need to try and, make sure we recover as much evidence as quickly as possible. There was no sign of any forced entry. Equally importantly, when I looked in the kitchen, there was cash, there was laptops, there were phones. Now, if someone had broken into the property, this was a burglary that had gone wrong as an example, why would you leave all those valuable possessions behind? Straight away, we're very concerned.
Police found no evidence to suggest that another person had been responsible and identified Alan Jeremy as their prime suspect. Where in the property?
When we were searching the house, we found a stun gun in one of the bedrooms. A highly unusual item. Who has a stun gun in their house? I have no idea whose it was, whether it had been used, what it was for, but at that point I just knew there was something that we had to take as part of our investigation.
Meanwhile, investigators looked to confirm Alan Jeremy's timeline of events.
Once Alan told us he'd been to the petrol station, it was quite usual for us to try and corroborate that to see whether he's telling us the truth. The obvious way of doing that is looking at CCTV at the petrol station, which we did obtain, and it did show Alan at the petrol station at the time he said. Interestingly, what we were able to see, not just what he did, but what he was wearing.
There was CCTV from the petrol station, showing that when he filled the car up with petrol, he was wearing black jogging bottoms and a white t-shirt.
What was interesting about that is that when we searched the house, that evening, that morning, we found those tracksuit bottoms in the washing machine, and they'd been washed. For me, that was really interesting. Why would you take your tracksuit bottoms off that you had on that evening and just put those in the wash cycle? What were you trying to hide?
Police suspect Jeremy may have been attempting to destroy evidence.
The jogging bottoms were tested by scientists who did discover some hydrocarbons, which was indicative that they might have been associated with petrol.
Jeremy's story suggested he had returned home from the petrol station at around 9 p.m, 3 hours before emergency services were called.
One thing we will typically do in any murder investigation is look at phones, use of phones, in particular Kirsty's phone. I found that Kirsty's phone had sent a text that evening to her boss, her boyfriend, at about 9:10 that night. Her boss had replied at about 9:20.
He expected her reply, but it never came, and this was exceptionally unusual.
Alan made the 999 call just before midnight. At 9:20, and for several minutes afterwards, her boyfriend had texted her back, and there was no reply. At this point, I suspect that Kirsty was dead.
Detectives probed deeper into Kirsty and Jeremy's relationship in the weeks preceding her death.
Alan had registered with a dating website or websites and had gone on some dates. So for anyone looking in from the outside, for all intents and purposes, Alan was accepting A, of the separation, and B, was moving on with his life.
However, just engagement in the dating process doesn't necessarily mean that someone's moved on from any hurt and difficult feelings they might have over a previous relationship. He wanted to set it up like he's taking the positive steps that he needs to move on from the end of this relationship.
From our investigation, we found that he'd penned a letter on the laptop that was quite to the contrary. It basically was a letter begging her not to go and that he wanted her back.
I think the police were deeply suspicious of Alan Jermy's claims that he had totally accepted the separation of their relationship because they believed that this was the motive for why Alan Jermy killed Kirsty.
Kirsty's friends spoke with police and revealed that she had raised some concerns about his behaviour.
Despite Alan telling Kirsty he was fine with their separation and he'd written a letter to wish her all the best, she had her suspicions that he was spying on her. In fact, she even went as far as to tell friends that one evening she'd found him crawling around the bottom of her bed in the middle of the night and was checking her phone. The more we found out about Alan, it was really clear that he didn't want her to leave him. Alan wasn't comfortable with their separation, and more importantly, he didn't want her to be with anybody else.
I think it's entirely possible that as the practical elements of the separation are now all coming to a head, the house going on the market, him telling the parents, him having to tell the children, I think that these are the trigger points that secure to Alan that this is real and it is final. So this is building a picture of not the placid, accepting character that Alan's been trying to portray, and instead someone that is becoming increasingly paranoid and is actually causing fright to Kirsty now.
I think Kirsty had every reason to be frightened of Alan. He was a trained black belt martial arts expert. She knew that would he ever want to, he could hurt her very badly.
When we spoke to witnesses, neighbours, people that knew them, the neighbours heard in the past arguments, which wasn't unsurprising given the fact that they were now separating. But what was really interesting on the night of Kirsty's death, no one had heard any struggle, any arguments. There was certainly no signs of a disturbance in the house. There was no injuries to Kirsty, no wounds, anything that suggested there'd been a struggle. So it still raised the question, what had happened to Kirsty? How had she died?
Kirsty's body was sent for a post-mortem to establish what had caused her death.
Whilst Kirsty had some burns to her body, the fire hadn't taken enough to completely destroy the evidence. We know from examining Kirsty's body that there was evidence of strangulation. There was no soot in her airways, which meant she was killed before the fire had been set. And we also know there was no signs of any injuries or defence wounds. There'd been certainly no struggle before she died. So what we did know is that Kirsty had been strangled to death, and we also know the fire hadn't killed her. The fire had been set deliberately to destroy the evidence.
As the fire burned downstairs, Alan Jermy called 999.
My rescue?
Alan, I've got smoke in my house. I've got two young children in the house.
Okay, you're able to get everybody out of the property?
I'm upstairs. The fire was downstairs. I'm not sure. There's just smoke coming from upstairs.
Right, okay, so you're not able to get out at the moment?
I don't. Not at the moment. And I've got two young children upstairs.
Someone who has committed a murder ringing 999. That's quite unusual. But what's even more unusual about that call is how rehearsed, perhaps, cold, calculated, callous Alan is in that call.
Okay, have you got a towel or something in there?
Yeah.
Can you soak it?
Just the door. Any water, sweetheart? Any water? Okay, good girl, good girl.
Okay, is that the bottom of the door you've blocked up there?
I'll just, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that'll just prevent any smoke coming
Right,
in.
let me on the door. Good girl, good girl.
For those children, it must have been a very distressing experience. They don't know what's going on, they don't know where their mother is. It's almost like using his daughters and their fear to add to the urgency and legitimacy that he's trying to present in the call.
This is a man who put his children's life at risk by setting fire to a house that, for all he knew, could have gone up like a tinderbox and put his children's lives in jeopardy.
The only thing is, I don't know where my partner is.
Right, do you think she was in the house?
Yeah, she I went to bed early.
it feels quite awkward when he introduces the information about his partner being inside, because it's done quite clumsily.
What's the name of your partner?
Kirsty.
Even when asked, is there anyone else in the house, having told the operator of his two daughters, it was some considerable time before he even got round to mentioning Kirsty being downstairs.
Throughout the whole call, he doesn't call out for Kirsty once. Doesn't scream her name. Doesn't shout out to see if she's okay. That's because he's killed her.
Alan Jermy was charged with murder.
Throughout his interviews, Alan denied any involvement whatsoever, or any responsibility for Kirsty's death. He was cold, he was calm. For me, if I'm an innocent man who's been wrongfully arrested for the murder of my partner, I'm not so sure I would be as calm and as collected as he was.
Alan Jermy has a very structured and planned approach to this murder of Kirsty.
He clearly thought he'd get away with it. He set that fire hoping to destroy the evidence, hoping to kill Kirsty and to live his life with his two children, and no one would ever know.
However, the actual execution does not line up with that structured and planned approach. He's clearly someone who likes stability and control, and as the separation between him and Kirsty is becoming more finalised, and he's at risk of losing the life which he enjoys, perhaps the change of access to his daughters, this has all fueled him to take revenge.
Alan was clearly consumed by jealousy, and selfishly, rather than let anybody else have Kirsty, let her live her life, he took it.
In the summer of 2009, Alan Jermy faced trial, charged with the murder of Kirsty Wilson.
I remember the trial distinctly. Alan sat in the dock, and I remember he was still very, very calm, very cold, I would say, throughout, which had been consistent throughout our entire investigation. He denied any involvement still at this point in her murder. He hadn't admitted to a thing.
He seemed smug and lacking in showing any signs of emotional remorse. He wasn't showing any emotion for the loss of his long-term ex-partner, the mother of his children.
Alan Jermy took to the stand to put forward his side of the story.
His defence was that he fully accepted that Kirsty hadn't died as a result of smoke inhalation, that she had been either strangled and suffocated, but that he had not been responsible for it. He maintained the account that somebody else must have been responsible.
So, somebody had walked into his property, no signs of any forced entry, no signs of any broken windows. They'd walked straight in, they'd found his petrol canister, they'd murdered Kirsty without any signs of a struggle, no disturbance, they'd set the fire, and they'd left, completely undetected. It was quite remarkable.
Under cross-examination, the prosecution looked for holes in Jermy's story.
It was part of Alan's account that he and Kirsty had watched Big Brother together.
What was interesting is I turned the TV on and saw the TV had been paused from the previous evening on a programme called Hannah Montana on the Disney Channel, which was a programme that Alan and Kirsty's children watched before they went to bed. That told me that Kirsty hadn't been watching telly after those children had gone to bed.
Prosecutors also drew attention to the jogging bottoms, shown traces of petrol, but under cross-examination, the defence landed an important blow.
The scientist who gave evidence about that conceded that because of the firefighters moving through the premises and through areas where petrol had been, and also when Mr. Jermy was filling his car at the petrol station, those hydrocarbons may have got there as a result of that, and not indicate that he'd been responsible for pouring the petrol in the scene.
The jury were told about the stun gun that was found at Jermy's home, as well as details of how it had been acquired.
We found evidence of a purchase for a stun gun from abroad. He'd done it in Kirsty's name. Why would you purchase a stun gun? More importantly, why would you purchase it in someone else's name?
The prosecution put it forward that it had been deliberately bought in her name to disguise the fact that it had been obtained, and that he had thought it would never have been discovered.
We subsequently found out later on that a package had been delivered to the property. I think it may have been found by one of Kirsty's parents. The package had been taken away by Alan. I suspected that was probably the stun gun, and he had told Kirsty it was DVD so that she didn't look for the package.
It suggests a level of pre-planning from Alan, where he has gone online, intentionally ordered these items, and then hidden them from Kirsty.
But the defense told a different story.
Package had arrived addressed to Kirsty. Kirsty's father had given it to Alan. He claimed that he had never seen the stun gun, although he was aware she had spoken about getting one, because when they moved apart, she would be on her own and would need some form of protection.
The prosecution put forward their version of how Kirsty Wilson had died.
It was our case. Alan had subdued Kirsty, strangled Kirsty and set fire to the house. Whether he'd done that with the stun gun or whether he'd used his hands to do that, only Alan will know. But what we do know and what we did present to the jury is clearly Alan as a capable, strong, skilled martial artist who may have used those skills to incapacitate Kirsty.
The one unanswered question was, why was there no defence marks on Kirsty? The prosecution suggested that by stunning Kirsty, Jeremy could then throttle her with his hands. He could do it in a way that would leave minimum amount of evidence in terms of bruising on her throat. He then hoped that by covering her throat and neck area with extra amounts of petrol, that would then destroy the evidence. But because the fire did not catch as strongly as he had hoped and expected, the pathologist was still able to show that strangulation had taken place.
We made an application to exclude the stun gun because there was no evidence that it had actually been used in the course of the murder. That was only a theory put forward by the prosecution. But the judge ruled against that. That presented something of a difficulty for the defence. However, during the course of the trial, we made some impact in relation to the points that they made, being able to explain quite a few of them away. We dealt with the hydrocarbons. Basically, they didn't have evidence that the stun gun had been used. There was good evidence that he loved her, that he loved his children, and that basically he had been sensible about the breakup and was coming to terms with it.
Following a 4-week trial, the jury retired for deliberations.
No one knows what a jury's verdicts will be except the 12 people who are making that decision.
That moment when the jury go out to consider their verdict, despite the evidence and no matter how well you've presented your case, you never take anything for granted, and ultimately it seems like an eternity.
After 5 hours of deliberations, the jury were ready to return their verdict.
Those moments, those seconds in court, you can hear a pin drop. But thankfully and rightfully in this case, the right verdict was delivered, and he was guilty.
Alan Jermy was found guilty of the murder of Kirsty Wilson and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years.
The judge told Jeremy directly to his face, how do you explain to 2 young children why they will never see their mother again?
The things that will always stick with me with this case is the cold, calculated way in which Alan tried to hide his crime, how selfish he was in doing what he did, putting his children's lives at risk. But more than that, how he took away their mum.
Alan Jermy will be eligible for parole in 2025.
If Alan Jermy does get paroled, I think if I was a family member, it would never be long enough, and he should never come out. We'll never know if that was premeditated, that murder, whether he'd spent weeks, days, hours planning what he was going to do to Kirsty. What we do know, though, is that after he'd killed her, and before he rang 999, he had several hours in which to think about what he would do next. Could he call the police and admit there'd been a terrible accident, something had gone terribly wrong? do you spend several hours thinking about how you are going to conceal your crime? He took Kirsty's life.
I want the world to remember Brianna for exactly who she was. For all of the good parts and all of the more difficult parts. I have a massive hole in my heart. Everything that I'm doing is not necessarily filling the hole. In a way, I feel like it's bringing Brianna on the journey with me.
So nice to be with you again. Just want to go through the presented links, what they're going to be introducing before you come on, so you know when to come in.
I think we can make society a better place if we listen to how Brianna's life was. Keep doing what you're doing. Oh, thank you. You're doing good. If I can make something positive out of what's happened to her, then it keeps her memory alive.
We're focusing on the senseless murder of 16-year-old Brianna Ghey, which shocked the nation. She was stabbed to death in broad daylight.
We're joined by Brianna's mother, Esther, to speak about her witty, fearless daughter.
I want to create a legacy for Brianna.
Warrington. I mean, not really much happens. It's in between two big cities, Manchester and Liverpool. A lot of my friends would go out to the park, hang out there, like getting the bus to Trafford Centre and going shopping. It's more of just making your own fun.
No!
Brianna, I think she turned to me and was like, oh, what year are you in? And I was like, oh, I'm in year 7, and she said the same, and then we just started speaking from there. She just would pull the funniest of faces, and we were sat there laughing at them and just hanging out in school, really.
I'm Daisy. I'm from Birmingham. I love it.
It was like the comfort that she brought me from the first time meeting her that made me realise that she was so kind and that the friendship would be genuine. We met when she was in year 10, and I think I complimented her hair, and all of a sudden it was just like she exploded, and she was like, thanks, and you know, I'll put this in it, this in it, and it was just like after that she just wouldn't ever stop talking ever again.
But you feel like home knows a woman right down, and I like how I'm running your touch. Rock, paper, scissors, sugar fish, and I let you in, cause that's how I love, and you're what I want, but
she was kind, and she was funny, and she could always make you feel better. Like dance around my kitchen, we'd do each other's nails, do each other's makeup, each other's hair. Sometimes we'd do TikToks, but a lot of the time we'd just have music playing and then just end up getting up and dancing around. I stayed at hers once and she dyed my hair like bright ginger. That was like the first time I had like a girly experience, you know, like she did my hair, she did my makeup, and like we talked about boys all night, and it was just stupid stuff. And she'd let me do hers every now and then, but hers was like her prized possession. Once Brianna had done her hair, you couldn't touch Brianna's hair.
Brianna's world was completely girly and pink. Absolutely everything that she owned was either pink or fluffy. Her bedroom was completely pink. She had a pink fluffy pen that she loved to get out and not necessarily do any work with. She absolutely loved the colour pink. I was 19 and I lived in a 2-bedroom ground floor flat. I was a young parent. I already had Alicia, who I had when I was 18. Becoming a single parent was an extremely difficult leap to make, but it wasn't as difficult as the situation that I was in prior to doing that. We were this really close family unit. That's all that you've got. It's not a big family, that you are extremely close.
I have been a part of Alicia and Brianna's life for the past 10 years, since Alicia was 9 and Brianna was 8. When I first met Esther, she was 27. She was a cleaner. She didn't have a lot, but she made the most of what she did have, and she always made sure that the children had what they needed and they had a good life.
So when Brianna was little, she was really high energy, just running around, absolutely no fear at all. She was just a little ball of joy and energy. She was beautiful.
She was like a little Tasmanian devil, just running around all over the place. You couldn't pin her down. She was obsessed with gymnastics. Yeah, she was just so happy and joyful, and yeah, she loved a big cuddle from her mum and her sister. As she entered her teen years, that's when her outgoing, chatty, social personality really dipped. She retreated inside herself. She just seemed so distant.
The first secondary school that Brianna attended, like, the issues started straight away. It was just so overwhelming. She didn't really focus on the work. Her behaviour became a bit more disruptive.
There was a lot of bullying in real life that happened. I used to stick up for her as much as I could, and I used to tell her and be like, oh, just ignore them, don't listen.
When Brianna first came to the school, it was pretty soon after that she spoke that she wanted to transition. She did say that she'd experienced a little bit of bullying. She was identifying as male. She'd been openly gay boy at her previous school, and that had been a little bit challenging, and she wanted to come somewhere and have a fresh start. It was not long after that lockdown happened.
So lockdown in the UK was a really difficult time, as it was everywhere across the world. You were suddenly cooped up in the house for long periods of time. Children in the UK, they're isolated. They're spending more time on screens and devices and looking around online. They're not spending a time in person with their friends.
During the lockdown, she started slowly growing her hair, and then I think it was around just before they went back to school that she came out as trans. She really took it all in a stride, and I think she was happy to have transitioned.
She said to me once, I don't think I could be Brianna without Mum, because she needed someone to be behind her, and Esther backed her the whole way.
She was lonely. She was so isolated, and she chose to spend so much time in a room. Brianna had a lot of people that she spoke to online. I think that she would have multiple accounts, and I didn't know exactly what she was doing.
Me and Brianna were in a lot of group chats together. We were trans, but we had so many other things in common. I think the lockdown obviously helped her because she'd started transitioning within it. And I think that was quite a good time for a lot of trans people to start transitioning, because you didn't have to worry about everyone else's opinion. You were in your house, you could do whatever you wanted. She was always very secretive over a phone, but at one point she left a phone outside of the bathroom, and I could see that it was like Bitmojis, men with beards. I remember looking through, so I knew that she was having these conversations. I struggled to monitor her, but she just put her own password in and was like, you can never access this. I was so concerned as to who Brianna was speaking to online. I was afraid that I was going to come home from work and I was going to find both Brianna and Alicia raped and murdered.
I didn't recognise her when she came back, and I don't think a lot of people did, because she changed so much, and she was a completely different person to who anyone had known before. Like, she was Brianna.
She came back very much like, this is me. There was a couple of times that there'd been some name calling. Brianna always gave it back as good as she got, and she always really stood up for herself.
We both like making videos, we both wanted to be famous, and I think that's just every 13-year-old girl's dream. She was very relatable. It didn't matter she was trans. Everyone found some kind of piece of themselves in Brianna.
People understood that she was a girl, then a lot of people accepted it and she felt more comfortable doing her makeup, and I think that's what brought her the most joy. One of her first videos doing a makeup tutorial for going to school, it went viral.
She felt like she had a purpose to be online. She felt like this was her kind of calling. Her followers kind of grew. She put more of her time and effort into doing these videos. She was very confident online and the way she expressed herself, but she had a lot of deeper issues going on. When her posts would blow up, she'd receive a lot of positivity, but at the same time she'd receive a lot of hate. They were commenting on that she was a boy, she was a man, calling her the T-word.
Someone would comment, "You're fat," and then the next minute she'd be like, "Oh, I must be fat," and I'm like, "But you're not." It's just people over the internet just being hateful.
Do you care that these people are saying these things? Like, why are you on there? Just come off. And she said, I really don't care if you see how many likes I've got.
The issue with online is once you see one video about like self-harming, all of a sudden you get 10, 20, 30 videos of this because the algorithm feeds you what you're seeing.
She started restricting her eating to the point of where she had lost so much weight that she was hospitalised. As a parent, you kind of look and you think like, why are you doing this? The more I tried to help, the more she pushed me away. Being hospitalised for the eating disorder kind of helped her a little bit because she couldn't access social media and she was just able to kind of be herself.
So we have an inclusion room in school. It's a fairly small classroom. Brianna was in there really because she wasn't able to go into lessons all of the time.
Brianna was definitely fragile and vulnerable. I think she could be gullible at times, and I think she just wanted a friend, basically.
She met a friend at the inclusion unit, and every now and again she'd be like, I'm going to go to McDonald's with Scarlett after school, or I'm going to the virtual centre after school.
The first time I heard of Scarlett was actually during a FaceTime call from Brianna and Scarlett. Myself and Esther were sat in the living room. They were in Asda dyeing the hair in the toilets.
So Scarlett was from a kind of, I guess, a typical family. Her mother was a home economics teacher. Her father was from a construction background. She was the youngest of her siblings.
There'd been an incident at a previous school where she had brought cannabis edibles into school. She knew that she'd made a mistake and wanted a fresh start. She did her work. She was quite quiet, and the same around school, so she didn't massively stand out in any way.
I was happy that she'd got another friend because I felt bad because I couldn't see her all the time, and at least it was a friend at a school as well.
Brianna started gaining weight and she seemed a little bit happier. Brianna making a new friend was really positive.
We were just grateful that she was smiling and happy and having fun and being outside. locked away in a room, staring at a screen.
Chat together, and she'd messaged on it in the morning, and she was like, oh, I'm getting the bus today, the number 28 bus to Colchester Library to go see her friend and this drug dealer.
She just told me that she was going out to meet Scarlett and some boy, and that was all I knew. She sent me Snapchat videos of her getting ready to go out.
Some sexy bits.
She seemed really confident in the videos.
Brianna had never been on a bus before in her entire life. The fact that Scarlett asked her to, and she immediately jumped up, shows just how deep the control Scarlett had over Brianna.
I think it was a big step for her mental health, for actually stepping out and doing that.
Brianna had texted to say that she was going out to see Scarlett. I was really pleased that she was going out at the weekend, and I thought that she'd go and have a nice walk or whatever with the friend. I didn't have any concerns about Brianna's plans or where she was going. I trusted that she was going to meet a friend. Of like her feet on the bus and said that she felt really anxious, and I just messaged back. I think I said something like that, that's well good, because I was just like, because she'd never been on a bus by herself. I remember kind of thinking like, oh, that's such a good step in the right direction, and maybe she's going to be fine.
She's like, I'm kind of scared on the group chat. And that's the last text I ever got from Brianna.
Police emergency. Hello? Yeah, please, an ambulance. I'm on Culture Linear Park, and somebody has been attacked. We've seen the attackers away, and she's unconscious. I think they're the attackers, so we need the ambulance and the police.
They were both dog walkers. The lady dog walker who made the call, they actually thought it might be a dummy or a mannequin, because she was actually found kind of crouched, slightly facing downwards in a fetal position. The next few minutes, I'm pretty sure, will stay in the memory of those two people for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think she's been attacked severely. Her face, her back. She may have even been stabbed. There's blood coming out of her back. Oh my god.
Hello? Need urgent help at this location. Clear, about half a mile, 3/4 mile from the car park. Female, numerous stab wounds, one to the chest, one to the neck. Could do with a medic back here ASAP, please.
I was off duty in another part of Cheshire. Nice day, and I had a phone call from a colleague. He was telling me that there was a young girl. There was multiple stab wounds, including at least one to the back of the body. Sort of hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
You've got the officer who's made it to the scene. He's joined by colleagues. Paramedics attend. They work quite frantically on Brianna in an effort to try and save her.
When it came to around 5 p.m, we started feeling a bit concerned about Brianna. It was getting dark early, and we hadn't heard from her for a while.
Just before we left the house, I tried to ring Brianna and her phone was off.
We walked to our local park, and there was a whole host of about 10 police cars. We immediately turned around and started heading home, and we made a little joke between ourselves about, oh, I hope that isn't for Brianna.
And then we then turned the corner and we were at the front door, and there was 2 policemen stood inside, and Alicia was stood on the stairs.
That's when our stomach dropped. And even the police officers themselves looked stressed and worried.
I think I might have said something like, oh, what has she done? And he asked me, did I want to sit down? And I was like, no, I don't, just tell me. And he said that he found the body. And I was just, I just said, and I was like, I knew this was going to happen.
It was just about losing daylight. Brianna was on one of the upper terraces. I have attended a number of murder scenes, but probably not one as quite as horrendous as that in terms of the level of injury.
The ferocity of the attack.
I'm considering a number of hypotheses. You know, is it a completely random attack, possibly motivated sexually or by hate? It was clear that whoever had done this absolutely intended to murder Brianna.
I went on to TikTok, and the first thing I saw was a girl found dead in a park, and I was like, that looks like Brianna. And my heart just dropped. I couldn't breathe. I just started bawling. And my friend said, are you okay? And I showed them my phone.
Somebody on my Snapchat had sent me the news article, and I thought, oh, they're just having a joke. I mean, I thought it was a sick joke. And then I thought, oh, this is really strange because she's not replied. I'm sorry.
Please don't be afraid, and we're working tirelessly to bring those responsible to justice.
Eyewitnesses had seen 2 individuals, and they appeared quite furtive as they made their escape. We knew that the killers potentially still had the weapon, potentially had her mobile phone. We knew that it had gone off the network, probably after she'd fallen unconscious, if not been killed.
I told the Cheshire Police absolutely everything. I told them who she had gone out with. It was Scarlett.
She's quite a clever girl, so I think she'd have clocked on to something. And I know that she was messaging some people. Brianna wasn't weak. She could defend herself, but with how brutal it was, what they did to her, and how quick it was, they didn't really give her a chance.
I was hoping that on that day that Brianna would go out and she'd have a nice time, kind of re-entering society. I responded to say like how good it was. I didn't get any blue ticks. So I don't know whether she ever saw it, how proud I was of her.
Yesterday, a teenage girl was found dead in a park by members of the public.
I formally declared Scarlett Jenkinson a suspect just after lunchtime on that Sunday. But I still had no idea who the male that she was with. I made the decision to put a press release out with the very vague descriptions of the two individuals. A couple of witnesses saw Brianna get off the bus, and one witness in particular had identified that Eddie Ratcliffe was with Scarlett Jenkinson, and that the three of them, Brianna, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, all walked off in the direction of Cultures Village Centre. I declared Eddie Ratcliffe my second suspect. We were dealing with two extremely violent individuals that, at that point in time, I strongly suspected had committed the most atrocious knife-enabled murder that I've ever known about in 26 years of policing.
Scarlett?
Yeah?
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
You Eddie? Yeah. Eddie, you're under suspicion of murder, alright? Do you understand?
Yeah, hang on,
I can't explain it.
Obviously you are under caution, so anything you say is getting recorded.
How come I'm a suspect?
How come you're a suspect?
Because I'm the last person that's seen her, isn't it?
I don't know. All the information I've received is you are a suspect, okay, to the murder.
Vigils have been held across the UK to remember Brianna Ghey,
with hundreds of people attending in cities including Belfast, Manchester, Lancaster and Leeds.
Though I only knew you for such a short yet long time, I will forever miss you, my most beautiful girl. I think it brought a lot of people from every walk of life together. I just know you're looking down on me with your 60-inch ginger hair, most gorgeous nails and truly iconic outfits.
There is a recognition that this is a girl who lived her life the way she wanted to live it, and she was brave and she was strong, and she's been a victim of a horrific crime.
I remember Sam Smith wearing a crown at Brianna's name on. It was really significant. The LGBTQ plus community really showed such support and love for Brianna, really, and I think that meant such a lot. And also parents of children who were trans, I've had quite a lot of parents reach out to me too. There were so many people that were mourning her death. It was a comfort to our family.
In the last hour, 2 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the murder of a 16-year-old girl in Cheshire.
Can you please state your full name for me? Scarlett Jenkinson. So Scarlett, you tell me what you know about what's happened to Brianna. I don't even find out about what actually happened, and there was some news. I was with Brianna when it happened. She was start from when I met up with her. Yeah. Me and my friend Evie met her at Hearts One. But then, like, she got off the bus, we went to, and then we went straight to Linear Park. We kept moving the park because it was like a forest thing, so it was kind of just like walking around the forest for a bit. And we sat on these 2 benches. We just kind of sat there chilling for a bit.
She confirmed, obviously, being with Brianna, and that Brianna was going to meet a drug dealer.
She basically looked at her phone and she's like, I need to go and meet the slug. So I was like, well, why, what's going on? Like, if it was the team hanging out with something. And she wouldn't give me any information. She's just 17 from Manchester. Like, he's picking her up. So I started kind of like interrogating them a little bit, saying like, oh, what's going on? Like, who is this person? And like, do you know him? And is he safe? And she just started having a go at me, saying like stuff, interrogating me. Just saying it's none of my business. She didn't walk off. I texted her like, well, why don't you just dish me and Abby? She still was fine.
The time is 16:54, and that's the end of the interview.
So I just need you to confirm your full name for me, please.
Iggy Maximus Radcliffe.
My watch now is start time is 17:57. So I want you to tell us in as much detail as you can why you're here today.
So, and I took precaution. Then some food from Sainsbury's. Waiting for them to get off the bus of the culture boundary. And then we walked to the forest. And then we got to some area. I turned away to go to the top of the tree. And then when I turned back around, I saw someone stabbing me.
He put all the blame on Scarlett.
Brianna was informed. Killed her. You know, laid down. You sleep. When I turned around, I saw her someone at least 3 times. Stabbing her off it.
Did you see what she had in her hand?
Was it like
Insulin.
she stopped going straight out to the right. The straight injured. You know, those canvas right there.
So, how long do you think it went on for before Scarlett stopped?
2 seconds. I saw it for 2 seconds. And then I followed it on my phone. Okay.
I think we'll end this interview for now. So, the time now is 1941.
There were some knives that were seized from Scarlett's bedroom with Eddie. There was not only the knife that stabbed Brianna, that was then identified as having Brianna's DNA or blood on it, but as well as that was his clothing and his footwear, which was fast-tracked forensically.
So Scarlett and Eddie actually met at Culture High School at the age of 11. After kind of Scarlett was asked to leave the school, they did keep in touch with each other. Eddie was from a kind of a slightly more kind of rundown estate, the middle child of 3. His mother was a ski instructor, father worked in industry.
She was obsessed with Brianna, but not necessarily in a hateful way when their relationships first started. And I'm not really sure at what point that balance tipped.
As the investigation progressed and we started finding the material on the phones, Eddie clearly didn't have any resonance with members of the trans community. Scarlett had this secret world, obsessing and looking at torture videos and snuff videos and these sadistic things that you just cannot believe that a 15-year-old would have interest in. That clearly at some point has normalised what they were going to do. This isn't just us fantasising based on stuff we've seen on the internet.
I heard Brianna like wailing in a room, like, and it was like a really horrific like scream, and she was like rolling around on a bed in her stomach, like she was clearly in a lot of pain. After Brianna vomited, she felt a little bit better. If she had have died, we would have all just thought that she'd have took her own life.
Scarlett was fixated on committing this murder. She knew exactly what she was going to do once she got physically in front of Brianna.
Saturday, the 11th of February 2023. Victim, Brianna Jai. Plan. I say code word to Eddie. He stabs her in the back as I stab her in the stomach. Eddie drags the body into the area. We both cover up the area with logs, etc.
We've seized a coat from your home address, which matches that description of what you've given us. How do you explain that there's blood on your sleeves?
Both of their mobile phones were critical in this investigation, and what they revealed was their messages between the two of them showed them talking about Brianna's murder, the build-up, the planning, the execution of it.
You said when you first interviewed that Scarlett isn't a normal person in your opinion. You said that she jokes about dead babies and things. Despite saying, no, this was a joke, and you went along with it. You were having discussions with Scarlett on messages about how she could find out how to preserve body parts of Brianna's after she was killed. So how can we think that preserving body parts is normal, and thinking about dead babies is not normal?
To spot shoes using an example to allow preservatives.
Preservatives of another person's body parts.
How body parts preserve? I didn't.
When confronted with the evidence, the collusion between her and Eddie and the plan around killing Brianna, once she became aware that Eddie was telling a very different story, she had nowhere to go and ended up resorting to no reply, no comment.
The female was not much shorter than the male, and she had long black hair. She was wearing a reddish coloured checked duffel coat.
Was that person you?
Whose blood is that in the knife, Eddie? Is that Brianna's blood? Is that knife used to kill Brianna? Are you responsible for murdering Brianna?
Some breaking news in the last few minutes. 2 teenagers have been charged after Brianna Ghey was stabbed to death in Warrington. A 15-year-old boy from Leeds, a 15-year-old girl from Warrington are both accused of murder.
We spent a lot of time worrying about who Brianna was talking to online and the strangers that she could potentially be meeting up with, and just the fact that Brianna's friend was involved is just unbelievable and devastating.
I didn't want to believe that it was Scarlett, because she was a friend who Brianna obviously trusted, and I trusted. I think it's the worst possible betrayal.
Two teenagers are to stand trial later, accused of murdering schoolgirl Brianna Ghey in Warrington.
Black coat, cream shoes.
For the trial, I had to sit there and I had to listen to absolutely everything, because I felt like I owed that to Brianna, because she shouldn't have gone through that alone. I wanted everybody to know exactly what they'd done, and for the most part of it, for all, there was no remorse.
Eddie pretty much stuck to his guns throughout. Yes, he brought the knife to the scene, and yes, he handed it to Scarlett, who then stabbed Brianna a few times. Scarlett was going to be blaming Eddie Ratcliffe. We know that at least Eddie must have inflicted some of those wounds, judging by the forensic evidence, and although Scarlett denied that throughout her trial, I'm a strong believer that she was probably involved in that too.
I almost felt like this wasn't happening to me and my family. It hadn't happened to Brianna. I was just somebody that was observing it. Like, I kind of did that through the whole of the trial, until the verdict came through.
A boy and a girl were today found guilty by a jury of the horrifying murder of Brianna Ghey.
Whether one or both are sociopaths, psychopaths, I don't really know, but I just think the combination of the pair of them together was just a sort of an evil concoction. After she's convicted and she's interviewed by psychiatrists, Scarlett admitted to taking part in the murder herself. So she's afraid that Brianna's going to leave her, so therefore she kills her.
Good afternoon.
To know how scared my usually fearless child must have been when she was alone in that park with someone that she called her friend will haunt me forever. When I was in court, I saw how broken both Scarlett and Eddie's mothers were. Like, I know that people say that they kind of blame the parents when a teenager does something, but they've got their own minds.
can't imagine that any parent would ever go out of their way to make their child become what Scarlett and Eddie are. Yeah, I've got a lot of sympathy for the parents. The initial meeting with Scarlett's mum was really emotional. It wasn't a difficult meeting. I think it was just something that we both really wanted, and it was good for both of us. And then since that meeting, like we speak. I think I speak to her like every week. I do really think it's been healing for not only for me but for Emma as well.
Since Brianna's passing, obviously it's been very difficult for Alicia and to us, and we have ups and downs and we have bad days, and we cry every now and again, and that's okay.
When we were arranging a funeral, I remember sitting there just thinking I shouldn't be arranging my own child's funeral. Brianna's funeral was actually the start of all of the campaign as well.
Esther never stops talking about her campaigns. It's such a passion. I think it has really helped a lot with her own personal healing, having something so positive to focus on and a way to look to the future. She's an amazing woman and I love her to bits.
At least 8 people have been injured by a teenager with a knife.
The 2 boys were aged 12 at the time they brutally killed a 19-year-old in a park last year.
What we've seen in the last few years in the UK is a really worrying trend of violence where it's kind of school kids, people of a young age, carrying out violent crimes upon their peers.
Police are continuing to question 2 15-year-old boys on suspicion of the murder in Bristol. He was fatally stabbed.
It doesn't surprise me that there's an increase in violent crimes. I don't think we'll ever know exactly what the motive was or what drove them to do what they did. The things that Scarlett Jenkinson was accessing online, there's just so much harmful content and negative influences that children have got access to. It's something that really needs to be looked into. Thank you very much.
This used to be a high school issue, but now we're getting issues that are coming up in children who are in year 3 and year 4, so you're talking about 8, 9-year-olds.
Our children are struggling to handle some of the content that they are being exposed to, and they are accessing things that they should not be accessing. The tech companies need to take a level of responsibility and be accountable.
There's lots of fallouts happen in school because of things that have happened online at home at night. In we come, good morning everybody. Floating in our bubbles, oh. Lovely floating this morning. Finding our space. Listening carefully for our music. Listening carefully, not yet. Listening carefully. Has it stopped?
I really do think that mindfulness kind of saved me.
it kind of took the impact from the trauma of Brianna's death. If we get mindfulness into schools at primary school age, then they've got those tools that they need to regulate their emotions. Has everybody got enough room this morning? Let's see. Are we ready? Are we ready to shake those hands? Just our hands, shaking those hands. Children's cognitive ability can be improved. So the part of the brain where we make those executive decisions, where our choices are made, where concentration happens, can improve. It's about where am I focusing my attention right now, rather than this argument or this upset right now, or my overexcitement. Coming to the senses as opposed to getting tangled up in thought and upset. Well done.
If you've had a bad day, just step back. And for us, it's all about taking a moment and before you do it, because you might regret what you did before.
Like once when I was very angry, I nearly punched my little brother. Then I didn't do it.
It helped me when I'm stressed when I'm doing my homework.
Wow! Oh, wow! Wonderful. I think that will do us for now. Thank you very much. I suppose that really we would hope that mindfulness sessions like this would reduce the amount of violence in schools. That's the hope. I mean, these programmes are designed to foster kindness, curiosity, connection. So all of those things combined, will hopefully have an impact on the reduction of violence, directly or indirectly. You know, we're going to be plenty of problems, but having that buffer of, a sense of being able to find the good, find the kindness in the complexity of an unkind world. And so being kind and slow all the way back to class. If children are taught to manage anxiety, children can actually flourish rather than just get by. Well done, everybody.
Join us for the best in entertainment, more exclusive interviews, and find out what's going on across the country.
You're always guaranteed a good night in Scotland.
So excited.
As yourself!
It's such fun. What's on Scotland? Friday at 7 on STV and STV Player.
I gave him all of my money, my entire life savings. He took everything, buttons, password, security codes, everything you need to drain on clients' accounts. You wanna play? Let's play.
The Catch. Watch every episode now on STV Player.
This is Celebrity Big Brother. Please do not spare.
The original celebrity experiment returns. Celebrity Big Brother this April on STV and STV Player.
The two teenagers who killed 16-year-old Brianna Ghey are due to be sentenced within the next hour.
You both took part in a brutal and planned murder, which was sadistic in nature, and where a secondary motive was hostility towards Brianna because of her transgender identity. You will only be released if, in the future, it is decided that you no longer present a danger.
What stuck with me out of this whole thing is that it's such an unnecessary murder. Why? They was just for wanting to experiencing it and their lives ruined and destroyed. And Brianna, clearly, with her life being ended too soon, it's just completely unnecessary on so many different levels.
But there's something about Brianna's case that probably will stay with me longer than any, if not forever. And it's about the level of depravity and violence that's gone on here, and no real understanding of where that's come from.
I think that when you lose a child, I remember describing it as having like a massive hole in my heart. that is still there, but you kind of learn to fill it with other things. Brianna is the catalyst for all of this campaigning, and it's just really important for me that she gets acknowledged for that.
Tonight, we honour Brianna with a posthumous Inspiration Award. And to receive the award, it is my absolute privilege to introduce a woman who continues to carry Brianna's light forward with grace and resilience. Esther Jack.
I'm the proudest mum in the world to be collecting this award for her today. Brianna was so proud to be trans, and she wouldn't let anybody take that away from her. My aim is to plant seeds of resilience, empathy and unity, making society a more accepting and safer place for all. Brianna is such a good example of the suffering that young people are going through now, and for me to not use my voice to try to make a change would be selfish. It's something that I'll continue doing until we actually see a change. I think the problem with algorithms is that once you look into something that's harmful, then you're fed more of that. And I think this is what happened with Brianna, and then it just kind of snowballed into a more and more dark place. Social media companies are making money from us wasting our time on social media. When you actually realise, you wake up to that, it's quite shocking, really.
Drive and determination really comes from creating a fitting memory for Brianna, helping other children who are facing the same challenges that Brianna faced.
I suppose if we look into the future, I would really like to see mindfulness in every school in England. I'd like to see mental health issues improved in young people. It'd be great to sit down with the heads of the social media companies, because I think that they've been so silent that everybody has a negative view on them, and I would like to see if there's any reasoning behind why they're silent, and if they're actually aware, and if they would be willing to acknowledge the harm and suffering that their platforms are causing children.
Everyone needs a Brianna in their life. She was one of a kind. She's special.
I want her to be remembered for all the memories that I've got with her, for how fun she'd be to hang out with, her love and all the good things that she'd do for people, and her kindness for everybody.
I think she still wants people just to live as their true self. I don't think she'd want anyone to feel like they couldn't do stuff because of what happened.
There will never, ever, ever be anyone quite like Brianna ever again. I just don't want people to forget her.
I just don't want people to forget. Because if she was still here, there'd be no way for anyone to forget her. So the weeks and months after Brianna being killed, me, Wes and Alicia, we would go for walks.
that year, 2023, the cherry blossoms they bloomed like massively. And I remember that we had all these pink skies, and every evening we went for a walk. Like, honestly, there was just so many pink skies. It was almost like Brianna's in a better place, or she's like sending us a sign that she's okay now. It's not only us that we're going to be okay, but Brianna was okay now too.
We owe it to Brianna to live our life in the best possible way, because she didn't get that opportunity, so we need to do it for her.
I think we can make society a better place if we kind of listen to how Brianna's life was and what we can do better. And I think that she can really be someone that people can learn from. Every night when the kids are in bed, I always say, "Night, night, I love you." And there was a point where Brianna was like, "Don't say that anymore." And she said it that much that I just stopped saying it. So that's why I said, hold your children tight and never stop telling them that you love them. Yeah.
If you've been affected by the issues raised in tonight's programme, you can find details of organisations offering support on our website, stv.tv/advice.